Hey everybody, it's my 40-gallon waterfall tank, but today we're actually going to be working on my little foot tank down here. I call this my foot tank just because it sits at the foot of my waterfall. This is a completely separate unit than the waterfall. I sort of deliberately designed it to kind of look like a continuation of the flow of the water, but right now we don't have a lot of flow of water going on in there, and that is usually when I get in here to actually do some maintenance on it. When my little pump clogs up, underneath of all that duckweed there's a pump, and the line runs around the back and it comes up, and that little piece of PVC right there is where the water is supposed to come out. But I used to get this tank clogged up. It had a pre-filter sponge on the pump, and that would get clogged up with all of the sort of biological grunge that develops on those sponges. And whenever it would get that clogged up, I would get in here and do some maintenance, get the filter running again and everything else. But I took the pre-filter off, and I've just been running it as an open pump, and ever since then it's been just running, and I have not done anything other than top off the water, and occasionally I will get in there and scoop out some of the duckweed. So today is going to be a duckweed removal day. I don't know if I'm actually going to do a water change. I'm going to test the nitrates. This is one of those tanks that I inadvertently set up with a really deep sand bed in there, and I think I kind of accidentally set up a tank that has a full complete nitrogen cycle where it actually takes the nitrates and breaks the nitrates down into nitrogen gas, and then I don't even have the nitrates building up in the tank. Now that does not mean you can just not do water changes. There are other factors involved. But in this case, in this tank, with the way it's set up and the way I maintain it and the way I top off and add water to it regularly, if the nitrates are still pretty low, then I'm not going to worry about doing a water change, and I'm going to test that before I even worry about it. So the first thing we'll do is we'll get in there, we'll get that pump cleaned out, we'll get the water flowing again. I'll top the tank off a little bit. It's about an inch or two lower than I like it. And we will skim a bunch of the duckweed and stuff out of there, and then we'll see what the nitrates look like. And if the nitrates are starting to get elevated or something, maybe I'll go ahead and pull some of that old water out and put some fresh water in and do a little brief water change. But otherwise, it's probably just going to be getting that pump flowing again and getting a lot of that duckweed out of there. And once the tank's opened up a little more and we can see in there, we'll have a look in and see if we've got any more shrimp swimming around or what's going on with the guppies. Probably got lots of guppy babies and that sort of thing in there now. So I know that's kind of an odd angle to look at a tank, but there's your before and there's your after. Now I did get in and do a water change. In fact, I did a really big water change, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But I did that water change despite the fact that the nitrates in the tank was under 5 parts per million. So considering what I'm about to tell you and considering those nitrates, then I'm going to say it's pretty safe to assume that I probably established some denitrification going on there in that deep sand bed. So what happened was, when I started getting in there and trying to clear out the filter a little bit after I had removed a bunch of duckweed, and here is the duckweed I removed from it. Not a huge amount, but I mean, for the little aquarium we're looking at, that's a pretty substantial amount of duckweed. Let me set that nitrate test down too. So I mean, it's, that's a pretty good amount of duckweed that I scooped out of there. So once I got the duckweed out, I started trying to get the filter cleaned out, and I didn't actually take it apart or anything. I literally just shook it around underneath the water to try to knock all the gunk loose. And when I picked it up, what I realized was, I'm going to use the term mulm loosely. It was probably more like silt or dirt or mud or something at this point. But the stuff that had settled to the bottom of the tank was literally about 2 inches thick. It was deep, and it was really thick, and it was actually starting to stratify, and layers of it were starting to like break loose and float to the surface in big gross black clumps. In fact, you can kind of make out one of the big black clumps of it right there that I didn't get cleaned out of the tank. And the reason this dead looking, see, this is what I'm talking about, that kind of stuff. It was just nasty, and there's a lot of it in there. But this is just a frond from a fern I threw in there, and you can see over time that even though the frond itself dies off, look at all the babies I get off of it. So that's all new Java fern. So that's in there doing well and growing. So anyway, once I found out that there was just that much gross, nasty crud at the bottom of this tank, I went ahead and did the water change. Now, when I do a water change on this tank, because it's sitting right down on the floor level like this, I can't really siphon it. And so what I do is I use my power water changer. This is a fluid transfer pump, and you just stick this end in the tank, and the water pumps out that end into the bucket. And if you're careful and you don't suck up any gravel, you can actually suck up loose mulm and silt and stuff like that, especially if you take the end of this and sort of swirl it around and get all the stuff swirled up into the water column. You can actually suck a lot of that out of there using that fluid transfer pump. And so that's how I did the water change / gravel vac. We'll call that sort of a combo move there. And I got both of them out of there, refilled the tank. Probably amounted to about a 75% water change. I mean, I really drained the water down until it was, 3 or 4 inches deep in this end, and no water was left up in the, it was just draining out of the far end here. And so then I topped it back off. So I don't know what the nitrates are now, but my total dissolved solids before the water change were 1,100 and some change, and now they are sitting right around 750. So I knocked the total dissolved solids down significantly, and I think that is actually causing my cherry barb there a little bit of distress. You can see how it's kind of swimming the glass like that and pacing around in circles. Almost looks like it's trying to get out of the tank. That's very likely because it could be trying to get out of the tank. A lot of times when you see fish exhibiting that behavior, it's not boredom or whatever. It's them literally trying to escape unsuitable conditions. And if I just put that fish through enough of a shock to its system osmotically from reducing the dissolved solids that significantly, the fish might be feeling a little uncomfortable, and it might be just trying to swim upstream or downstream, or just swim to where the water is more better for it. The same way if you were in a smoky room or something, you might get up and try to go outside so you could breathe a little easier or something. And the fish are the same way. When they're in water that's not right for them, it's the wrong water hardness, or it's too warm, or it's too salty, or whatever, the fish will try to get out of it, and they'll try to go somewhere else. And of course they're in a little glass box, so they can't. And the behavior winds up looking like that. They just kind of swim around looking for a way out. And so I'm hoping that the fish will adapt to the lower dissolved solids. I didn't do anything that radical. I mean, I only dropped the dissolved solids by about 300 points or something. And when you're talking going from 1,100 down to 700, that's not that big of a shock. It obviously is mostly the salts that were in the water. It's not the nitrates, because before the nitrates were only 5 parts per million. So what I don't even believe in anyway, what some people might consider nitrate shock. I don't even believe nitrate shock is really a thing. But if some people are suggesting that maybe it's nitrate shock, again, that's not really a thing in my opinion. But even if it were a thing, we didn't reduce the nitrates. There was hardly any nitrates in the tank to begin with, so that wouldn't be what it is. What it probably is the sudden reduction in salinity, or total dissolved solids. Total dissolved solids is defined as salinity, whether it's table salt or marine salts. Any dissolved minerals are basically dissolved mineral salts, and the density of the water is considered its salinity. So there's a lot of different ways. You can call it the specific gravity, you can call it the density, or you can call it the salinity, but all three of them are a way of describing the total dissolved solids in the tank. So I dropped the salinity, I dropped the total dissolved solids reasonably significantly, but not radically. And so it probably will just be sort of uncomfortable for the fish for a little bit. And I would imagine by this evening it'll be behaving normally. As far as the other fish in the tank, I've got three big fat female pregnant guppies. I got 2 of the male sort of Endler hybrids, I guess they are. And I've got 4 little fry over here that have been swimming around in a group. That one you can see clearly, that yellowish one, that's the biggest one out of all the ones in there. You can see another one next to it. So there's 4 of them I've seen swimming around there. That's not to say there's not more hiding in the bushes there, and there very likely could be some swimming around up at this end of the tank, because there is plenty of water for the fish to swim around up in there. As far as shrimp go, I have seen 1 I don't know if there are any others. I know there was at least 4 in there before. I've caught one and removed that to my tank in my office. And there's at least one in there still that I just saw a few minutes ago rooting through what's left of the mulm. I didn't really get the gravel vac siphon thingy into the front there, so you can still see a lot of that crud is in the front. But this is not where the bulk of it was. The bulk of it had all sort of built up in the back, and you can actually see some gravel and stuff back there now. So I really did pull a lot of that stuff out of there and got the tank up and running again. So once again, you know, perfect example of not a lot of nitrates going on in the tank, under 5 parts per million, but it has been months and months and months since I've gotten in there and done a water change. I've topped it off. I have to top this tank off fairly frequently, but it's been a very long time since I've gotten in there and actually done a water change. So despite those really low nitrates, it was still time to get in there and do a water change and get all that mulm and crud and crap out of there. I've got the water refreshed a little bit. I've pulled some of the mineralization out, which is I'm trying to kind of work it down to be closer to fresh water. And so there you go. One more step closer to that. The tank's up and running again, looking good. We got water flow, and we'll have to wait and see how that cherry barb fares after it's a little bit of a shock today. So there you go. Let me readjust my light. I've got my light aimed down special so we can have a look at that tank particularly. That's what it usually looks like. Not a very brightly lit tank, but I enjoy it nonetheless. So there you go, everybody. A little bit of maintenance on my much neglected foot tank. Hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, this one here is my 40-gallon waterfall tank. I don't actually have a playlist for my foot tank, but if you're ever going to see it, you're going to see it on my waterfall tank playlist. So there you go. All right, everybody. Thanks again for watching. Hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you real soon on the next one.